Pliny, Electric Sunrise from Handmade Cities, 2016. Welcome back to Hybrid Theory. I'm Aurian Archive, and let's get restarted. You might have already noticed by now that the web page is open to an amplifier. And this is the second stream I've done today. Apparently, I didn't actually have a YouTube Create window open for the first stream. So we'll try and make this a little bit more condensed and to the point. In a previous stream, I think the previous one from this one that actually went live, I talked about a mea culpa and an issue I ran into with my media server in relation to the upcoming Steam Deck. I have made a big deal about how Valve can get creative with the way Linux systems can be formatted and approached in order to offer additional performance on the solid state drives. And I use my own media server, which has a 20 gig root partition, as an example. Slight problem is, I quickly ran out of space doing the updates on a Debian style system in a 20 gig root partition. Now, part of this is due to problems I've didn't really think about beforehand. A lot of lightweight distributions that are small on installed space ship with very few applications. They ship with very few toolkits, and essentially anything that you want to add extra to make the system functional, you're going to have to add extra or just deal with less than stellar replacements offered by the distribution. And I hadn't quite realized that all of the since I was turning the media server into a production studio with editing programs, authoring programs, and I was running in a bunch of different toolkits and different versions of the toolkits, I quickly ran out of space. And in attempting to, uh, again, relating to the previous stream, at some point, the microphone cut out, and I didn't realize it, and I have no idea how much of the stream actually went through. I am not in love with the sound of my own voice to listen to myself talk on about something that I just recorded. Alright. Yeah, no, it does take a certain level of narcissism to do any kind of podcast or streaming format because you do have to listen to yourself. Just I realize I don't sound that great. Alright, so I don't know how much of the exact problems I went into were listed down, but basically I decided since my root drive was approaching, or my root partition was approaching full, I was just going to pop in a USB stick, boot to a live install session, and then just modify the drive externally. I've done this before. I don't want to say thousands of times, but probably hundreds of times. I've re-edited hard drives after installation, across all the computers that I've built, either on contract, on commission, for myself, or for others. And one of the things that I've mentioned in previous live streams is that the lack of abysmal quality of NVIDIA's driver support is one of the reasons I have a hard time taking the company seriously anytime somebody talks about NVIDIA's wonderful drivers. No, they're not that good. They're really not that good. I had gotten used to using the NVIDIA driver, causing on a 1660 Ti, causing my desktop to lock up after a certain amount of time. The X server would just stop responding. or the Wayland server. If for some reason I was running a distribution with Wayland, it really didn't matter which one I was using. If I had the NVIDIA driver installed, the system was going offline. Would be accessible over the network. I could see it, could still talk to the server components and the media server component, but the desktop would be unreachable. To date, I had never experienced that lockout using the VESA driver, VESA, or the X.org Nouveau driver, which is compatible with some of the NVIDIA cards I have had in the past. Because I hadn't experienced those problems with a live installation image, a live CD, or a live DVD, I didn't really think about that much when I booted off of a live USB stick and left the drive editing running while I went to work. And then when I got back and moved the mouse and no response. I still don't know if I actually have lost all of my data. I gave it 24 hours for whatever operations to finish in the background because most of the time when it's locked out, it's just been the X.org or Wayland servers on the NVIDIA driver. The rest of the system is just running fine. So as long as the partition editing completes successfully, it shouldn't be a problem. Well, now when I turn the media server on, it boots to the login screen and then loops back to the login screen. I can't go any further. And now that kind of put me in a foul mood where I now don't trust the NVIDIA graphics card to keep keep the system stable long enough for a drive edit to complete or to run and install on the existing drive system. And now we get into complicating factors. I was already planning on upgrading the primary drive uh, from uh, from a right now it's using a magnetic drive to a solid state drive, just so that if I was immediately serving videos or serving lots of videos or trying to uh, play on the computer, a solid state drive is obviously better for more immediate tasks than a magnetic drive. Only thing is, another complicating factor here, not just me failing to discount that the NVIDIA card would cause a lockup on the open source drivers, not just the closed source driver. Uh, I had bought a solid state drive, a SK Hynix Gold something. It was on an Amazon Gold box deal of the day, and it was cheap enough for the gigabytes that I couldn't pass it up. So I sucked it up, put it on a credit card, and went ahead and got it. Well, a little while ago, Ryeta desperately needed a new computer. I and he knew that, I've been searching for parts to just fix my computer, so he decided rather than bothering me about hunting down parts, he was just going to go deal with a scalper. And he did. And I can't even remember the name of the people that he bought from. I tossed the flyer, their tech support flyer, into the trash can. But these yokels charged him up the wazoo for an RTX 3060, and they sent the solid state drive in Ryeta's computer without the mounting plug installed. Yeah, that you heard me right. There was nothing securing the solid state drive. No heatsink, no nothing. Well, good thing that I'm a paranoid, delusional lunatic who continually stocks and keeps old hardware around. Because I just happen to have solid state mounting screws on hand. Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah, when am I ever going to need these? they come with a motherboard. You get like two with every motherboard. It's kind of what could I have been thinking of that I was going to hang on this solid state drive mounting screws? Well, whatever I was thinking, apparently it was a good thing to think because somebody actually shipped a computer without the solid state drive being mounted correctly. So paranoid illusion. Sometimes it can actually work in somebody else's favor. Um, and anyways, to kind of continue what happened is I was suspicious of the drive that was sent in the computer I had bought. So I first tested that drive on one of my systems, and nothing. Uh, Getting all kinds of read errors. So I tried the MySK Hynix Gold drive and Raida's computer, and it booted up just fine. So the solid state drive that was shipped with Raida's computer was broken out of the box. So I looked at Raida and said, okay, just, go ahead, take it, run with it, you know, RMA this drive. When you get the replacement, just hand me the replacement. Okay, to put this in perspective, I'm putting this, I'm intending to put this drive on a Ryzen 1800X. Not exactly the fastest processor by current, which you can currently get either, and it's going on. I think it's an B350, B450. I'd have to go look at the motherboard. It's not going on the fastest motherboard either. So a high end, I'm not going to notice the difference in performance. Uh, because I'm probably not ever going to be putting this particular computer in a situation where that extra performance is the difference between playable and unplayable. It's still a solid state drive. I'm mostly using this to watch movies and also stream videos. And okay, so I don't have my replacement drive. I'm not enough of a jerk to just kind of go bug Rieta. Have you gotten the ODM, the RMA drive from the ODM who screwed you over? Have they sent you a replacement yet? Because, now would be a really good time where I could use that drive. And so last night, someone just asked me in City of Heroes how I'm doing, and that's a loaded question. And I just, start down a list of, because of my chutzpah, uh, hubris, arrogance, and possibly destroyed all of the data on one drive. Uh, and yeah, I've lost drives before. I mean, I'll get over it. There wasn't anything on the media server that's not irrevocably irreplaceable. I mean, it may take me a while to re-rip every single Blu-ray I've ever bought. May take me a while to re-rip all of the DVDs I've ever bought, but it's just a time sink, and I can just like set it to rip and go to work and come back and be done. I mean, I can rebuild a movie collection. I can rebuild a television show connection. Hosing the drive, not really a big deal. Just hurts my ego that I hadn't thought that far ahead. And on top of that, uh, you may have heard that there's hurricanes, tropical storm season. So the hurricanes and tropical storms are sending fronts up. And according to my radar system, yesterday we had 8 separate different fronts rampage over us. I really wanted one of those old fashioned naval barometers where the arrow needle moves back and forth. Because I'm willing to bet that that needle would have been spinning like a stopwatch rather than, a slow, gentle push from one to the other. It was just brutal. So I've got a massive headache, and on top of that, I'm dealing with apparently I've only got one kidney, so those medications have been changed up. Uh, try and make sure that, all of the toxins in my bloodstream get, purged out. And I'm relating this to another player in City of Heroes. Not coincidentally, the same person who commissioned me to build them a computer when the Ryzen, uh, when one of the Ryzen series was just launching, and I think it was the Ryzen 5000 series and the Radeon 6000 series were being launched. And so I was trying to schedule the purchasing of components alongside the launch of those products. Well, as we now know, the Radeon 6000 series was a complete and total paper launch, no actual product in channel. And there still is just no product in retail channel. And on a tangent here, I found it interesting that PC Gamer, I've taken shots at them before, they're not really PC gaming oriented. They had the gall to refer to scalpers reselling products that they got from a black market. They had the gall to refer to those scalpers as resellers than just going ahead and calling them scalpers and pirates who were ripping people off, oftentimes reselling hardware that's already been used, ran at maximum, and taken out of a digital currency miner's rig because the hardware is no longer performing where the miner expects it to perform. Uh, so it's keeping that in mind. This is that also is why Valve recently, topping on the Steam Deck for a minute, Valve has said that they expect that the Steam Deck for a lot of users will be a major upgrade. Yeah, Valve's not wrong about that. It probably will be an upgrade given how digital currency miners have been using government backing to hijack, sometimes at weapon point, actual graphics card shipments and processor shipments. And I do not at all feel sorry for any scalpers who are losing money because processors are starting to sell at MSRP or lower. Good. Go out of business. Default on your loans. Go to jail. And again, so last night, I'm just rolling through all of this. Just kind of just going down the list of hubris, arrogances. I gave away one of my solid state drives, actually the only backup I had. And okay, fine, I do have some other magnetic drives hanging around. They're all laptop drives that use the ATA specification for input. Yeah, I could probably make them work using an adapter. I'm just not so sure that I really want to be using an array of 60 gig and 80 gig laptop drives. And if you're wondering why I have those, uh, real quick question. What interface did the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 2 use? There's your answer. Uh, and really, one of those drives I bought an adapter to use it on the Wii U. Yeah, the Wii U, I think. Um, so yeah, it's like if I'm really out of luck, I'm not that far out of luck. I mean, I've got other options. I just don't like those options because they're in some ways arguably worse than just sucking it up and paying out. And again, so last night I'm going off someone's act. How's it going? And I'm just going down the list, and then this other player, and it's the reason why the amplifier is in front of me, and I've kind of been sitting on the amplifier page for the whole opening here. They say they want me, they're willing to do a trade. I've got something that they'd like, and if they can get that, they'll, you know, uh, get me a solid state drive. And the thing that they're interested in is one of the headsets that I have. And originally, this stream was supposed to be about audio and amplifier and electrical consistency, but since I spent already an hour today on that subject. I'm kind of wanted to condense the original stream into something a little bit more friendlier to um, friendlier to listen to, especially if you're on the go. So I haven't really been doing a whole lot of mousing around simply because, if you're listening to this in your car, on your bike ride, whatever, hopefully, I'm drawing things together and painting you a mental picture. And what it comes down to is uh, this person who commissioned me to build a computer last year, they ultimately wound up with the 5700 XT graphics card, and apparently they're loving it. And I kind of still today kick myself because I didn't take the opportunity while they were offering to get whatever you want, just get whatever you want. And I'm going like I really don't need anything. It's my R9290X is not actually that bad. It's I don't need anything. I really don't need anything, and I'm still kicking myself that I could have gotten myself a 5700 XT last year when they were still selling close to MSRP, and I didn't. And one of the things that was on their list to buy was a gaming headset. Now, this player had a specific list of requirements that I can, on a substantial level, relate to. It's already admitted I've got some issues with blood toxins. I'm having to take some uh, different medications. Some people will call them binders. I think I'd refer to them as diuretics. Uh, and I'm really scared. Now that I know that I only have one kidney, just actually puts into perspective some of the medication, actually, a lot of the medication problems I've had over the years, and why some of them just have unexpected effects. Are if you are weighting a medicine based on a certain amount of blood absorption or blood reaction, and the blood makeup is you've got too much toxins in the blood, you don't have enough iron in the blood like I have iron anemia, you've got all these different factors going on. If they weren't diagnosed correctly and you're not weighting your medications for those uh, changes, you can maybe get some odd effects or odd effects, or expect some odd effects, because logically speaking, the uptake and metabolization of that particular medicine, how it gets distributed throughout the body, may not be exactly how you think it's going to work. And again, this goes back to I was pumped full of neurological drugs like Ritalin, Zoloft, almost everything else that was in that classification of or attention hyperactive deficit disorder, or attention deficit hyperactive disorder, whichever one it is, when all I had was just iron anemia. Attacking a blood problem with neurological chemicals has all kinds of effects that, oh joy, apparently I'm going to be one of the guinea pigs to find out what those effects are. Anyway, so I can appreciate someone who takes medications and is extremely worried about doing something dumb because the medications have an effect, a drowsiness effect, uh, a cognition effect, a memory effect. Like when I take the iron pills, I notice that I get a little sharper, a little easier to remember long things in detail for longer. When blood oxygen starts going low because the iron's running out, and it like dips below 90%, and I become an airhead. There's no air in my head. Given that, when somebody says, they have some medical conditions, and since this person's not me, I don't think I have permission to talk about what their issues are, but I can appreciate that they have problems with medications, that sometimes they really need things dialed back as simple as possible. The least amount of work, the least amount of things that can go wrong. And one of the things they wanted was a gaming headset. Well, if you're working a gaming headset and you want simple, nothing can go wrong, you don't have to worry about any buttons, you just plug and go. A USB headset is really the best way to go. And so I started looking around. I had an idea of how much was in their budget to spend uh, on a headset, and I wound up recommending them the Razer Kraken Kitty Edition because it fit their aesthetic. It was stylish. It on paper had pretty decent specifications, and well, they asked if I had one, and I went no. So that was my Christmas present. Razer Kraken Kitty Quartz Edition headphones. And I've tweeted about them, wrote a bit about them. They're decent headphones. And they did something. The most astounding thing that they did is the reason why I have an amplifier open. What we're looking at is the Zalman dual output 5.1 ZM RSA. I bought like four of these, maybe more. Uh, I could only track purchasing four, but I'm pretty sure that I didn't buy them all from Newegg, or I think like bought a couple from 3BB Tech whenever that was a thing, and maybe one or two from Tiger Direct. I can think I used to buy these things like if I saw one on sale, I'd get two of them because I loved them. I had one for each computer that I had before I started selling computers off. Now, fair point, these are not very good amplifiers. They're I I wouldn't call them audiophile grade so much as anti-audiophile. The wiring's not very good, the amplification circuits aren't very good, but they were cheap and they were good enough. And they did something very well. They worked with the Zalman ZM RS6F headphones. Now I first tried these at an E3 convention and I loved them. And for a many years, these were my go-to headphones. Now, you might be looking at them and going, those look a little oddly shaped. They look a little heavy, too. And why do they have three cables? Well, that's because this device was a surround sound headset. It actually has six speakers. Now, they're not very good quality, but it had six of them. So between this headphone and this amplifier, I knew what surround sound sounded like to me. Now, as I've stated in previous live streams, I have synthetic ear canals. I had to have tubes drilled because I was born deaf with the canals not forming properly. Apparently, that's not the only organs that didn't form properly. Yeah, give me a minute to be bitter here. I'll be back to sarcastic in a moment. Alright, so I really like the Zalmans, but I will admit that if Drop ever got permission rights to collaboration to remake these with decent amplifiers and got to redesign the amp to be audiophile grade and not how would you like your music distorted today. Yeah, I'd probably buy that, but wow, that's a ton of work. Uh, but anyways, so speaking of that, drop O2 SDAC. Now, and I'm probably going to get a kick out because it's going to ask for a login. So we'll. Okay. Uh, this is actually the amplifier that I use on my desktop today. And the thing is, this does it actually give us the Details. Okay. The deck itself, um, I know what I'm looking for, but okay. This DAC amp does 24-bit 96K decoding. Now, for many people, they may not realize how exactly that was via NV True Audio. Now, we're going to jump back in time back here, but years ago, VIA had a push against Intel's AC97 codec and was pushing via NV True Audio. Now, via Envy's, you had NV24, which is 24-bit, and then you had NV32, which was 32-bit. And now there's a few number of, I've actually got, I think with the Zorlu and the topping amplifiers I have amps that can decode at even higher bit rates, 32-bit, 384K studio sound. And for the most part, there is a trade off. For most of the music that you listen to, most of the games that you play, they're not coded in ultra high bit rates or ultra high sample rates. So, having a lower sample rate, having a lower bit rate is not always a bad thing. DVD quality, for example, is supposed to be around 16-bit 48K. So if you're over that, you've got theoretical better sound quality than a DVD. Well, I've started with the drop, and actually we're going back a little bit further, and that years ago, before I went to school to get a degree, moved to a different state for that, and okay, I want V-True. Actually, we're going to start with Velodyne V-Free and Velodyne V-Bolt. Okay. Years ago, it's like I had these Sony headphones, I had Sennheiser headphones, I had something by JVC. Uh, I had a large collection of different headphones and different amplifiers. But most of those devices were really constructed uh, to be used with an AOA amp that was hooked up to some Pioneer desk speakers, and this is another one where I'll do a quick search. Pioneer Andrew Jones. Uh, and this actually came up on Drop when somebody was talking about all the things that Andrew Jones had designed, and I didn't really know a whole lot about the speakers I had picked up or the people who had designed them. In fact, the Pioneer speakers that I had, of well, their model number didn't even exist. Apparently, they were a special sale through Circuit City. Uh, and apparently, they have some link to Andrew Jones. I really don't know what that link is, but apparently, he's someone who's really good at designing speakers. And because of that, uh, because of how I was listening to music as an audiophile and using a relatively decent amp, relatively decent speakers, and if I had to turn the speakers down, I had to use the headphones, I would just hook the headphones up to the amp. And an important thing when you're talking about headphones is impedance. And impedance in headphones, the higher impedance demands more electrical power to drive the diaphragms, the actual drivers inside of a headphones. Your better headphones require more power, physical electrical power. And even Google says, and I know Google can sometimes not be very accurate because of political reasons. Headphones with low impedance are more susceptible to blowouts And they're also more susceptible to noise crossover, noise generation in line. The diaphragms move when they have a signal that's not necessarily the audio signal. Now, because of that, and because of something that was called AC 97, most uh, most PC computing sound when I was when in the Unreal Tournament 99 era, in the City of Heroes launch era, pre World of Warcraft. In that time, AC 97 was the default audio standard, and it was not very good. And I'd go so far as to call it terrible, but that's an insult to terrible. But the point, kind of, is uh, the AC97 codec. There were a lot of different efforts to take it down, and because AC97 was so junk, it's one of the reasons why a little company called Creative got so big with something called Sound Blaster. Because those early Sound Blaster cards, the Sound Blaster Live, the Audigy series, and on upwards to whatever they're at now, those. Oh, that was actually a pretty good price on a camera. Although I probably don't. Huh. That actually. Did Creative do a desktop soundbar? Uh, how much is it? 10-inch wireless subwoofer and Dolby Atmos soundbar. $1,000. Yeah, outside of my price range. Okay. Anyway, so Creative got really big by offering sound cards that worked over the PCI bus. However, there is a power limit, and we can just look that up. PCI power limit. And okay, that's PCI Express. We want not PCI Express. Uh, PCI. Let's just look up PCI first. See what that gets us. Okay, Science and Technology. Peripheral component interconnect computer bus. That's what we want. And we're looking for card voltage and key. So a 32-bit. Uh, you have both 5 volt and 3.3 volt support. PCI, so I'm looking for PCI 32 or PCI 3. PCI 3. Power output. No, not PCI Express, PCI 3. Not PCI Express. And this is the problem with bit rot in that everything's about PCI Express, not it's very difficult to find the old PCI, so actually uh, do we have, if I set up, look up watts, volt, okay. Alright, it doesn't really give me anything but 5 volts and 3.3 volts. But alright, the point of this is that your power output over PCI is excessively, extraordinarily limited. And with that kind of limitation, you can only drive headphones so far. And because of that, even if you got a Sound Blaster on a PCI bus, you still weren't able to power the best high-end headphones. You still needed a dedicated amplifier. And most of your dedicated amplifiers weren't really designed to work with a computer's output. I mean, you could, but it, it'd be a little funky. And for the most part, PC audio was kind of a joke, uh, because developers didn't bother encoding for anything over AC97. I mean, why should they? Uh, Most of the users were choosing AC97. And okay, you had some who would add Sound Blaster effects, the environmental effects, but it wasn't until Intel introduced Azalea HD audio that game developers started adding higher resolution sound rates to their game encodings and started doing more with audio generation. And bringing that forward, one of the first companies, and this was when I was writing with Game Nikki, approached me and asked, did I want to try their new hardware? And that was SteelSeries. And they shipped me a SteelSeries headset with a USB DAC. And talked about this before, I think, in other live streams, but there's also a hard limit to how much power you can put over USB. And I wasn't expecting much. But it blew my mind because the laptop I had at that time was an HP N5470. And when I hooked the SteelSeries DAC up to that laptop, it was a night and day difference between with the onboard audio, which was an AMD chipset. I think, no, was that an AMD system? Uh, HP M5470. Pavilion N5470. Uh, I have no idea what this site's going to give me. All right. It was an Athlon 4 1000, so it was an AMD system, and it blew my mind how much audible difference there was between SteelSeries USB DAC and the on-chip audio, and that was really the first time when it clicked that PC audio could be something more than just a pale shadow of audiophile grade equipment. And I kind of left off focusing on my audiophile grade equipment and got involved with like Via Envy's True Audio initiative, the 24-bit 192 sampling, the 24-bit 96 sampling, the higher data rates, the better sound quality by default. And that kind of brings us back to at some point, after I'd sold off most of my audio gear, and I was just headphone shopping. I wanted something that uh, would be wireless but also have decent quality sound, and I found some Velodyne V-Frees that were for sale, very very cheap, refurbished, and I bought a pair. And I absolutely loved the hound out of those things, even though they were plastic and brittle. I followed those up with the Velodyne V Bold, and I actually still have the V Bolds. They're sitting in a cabinet right behind me. Uh, Occasionally, I pull them out and use them if we'll go ahead and say it. If I'm working on somebody else's laptop and I need to test the audio, the Velodynes, I know exactly what they're supposed to sound like because I've used them for so long. And after I had the V Bolds, I was still deal hunting, and I came across the V-True Aluminums. And those kind of became my baseline because, hand on heart, the sound quality was as good as any of the high-end Sony, Sennheiser, JVC. Insert your favorite brand here. I don't think I ever actually owned a pair of Bose headphones. or I don't recall ever buying some. You'd think that's something I would remember, but either that or they just didn't stand out. I still have the V-Trues as well, and I used them kind of as a comparison for everything else. But for a while, I was using the Velodynes with the Via Envy card, and the Via Envy card was on a PCI bus, and then I replaced the Via Envy card with something when I got a computer that didn't have a PCI slot. I got an Asus Zoner PCIe card, and I still got the Zonar somewhere. And the Zonar, one of the big things about it, because it was on a PCI Express bus, it actually could deliver the electrical power to drive the Velodynes without needing an amp. Well, by that time, like I said, I had bought a bunch of these Zalman amps, and most of them were just dying due to age, cord rot, and other issues. So I was kind of just throwing them out as they just died one after another, breaking out the next one. And when I got the Zonar, I just kind of gave out the rest of the Zalmans that I had because I wasn't using them. The Zonar was powerful enough to drive my headphones. Well, and the Velodyne V-Trues have basically been my go-to. They are when I compare any new headset or any headset that someone wants me to look at, they're what I compare it to because they have an astounding audio quality. But I've always been looking for a replacement for, well, three reasons. Reason number one, they're actually own ear headphones, not over the ear headphones. That means they are incredibly uncomfortable to wear for long periods of time. I don't care how good your sound quality is, if you make my ears hurt, I'm looking for an alternative. Reason number two, the cable that came with the headphones, you can see in some of the pictures here, it's like a little blue thing, transmitted the sound of anything that was rubbing against them. So, like, if your cable was perfectly still and you were sitting still, you no problem. But if you were not moving around, you'd like hear these little like plasticky. I don't know if you can hear me scritching on these headphones. But you'd get a little something that told you that there was something going on. And the third reason is Velodyne got out of the headphone business and got into LiDAR. They're not actually, as far as I know, making the V-Trues anymore. So I was on the lookout for something that to replace, because if once I drop them or something happens to them, well, they're gone. I needed another option. And at some point, I somebody pointed me at the drop HE 4XX yeah, the which was described as an entry-level planar magnetic. Now that drop actually has a cheaper version than this one now, the HE4X or the HEX4, I think. Um, but when I got these were the first headphones that were under $200. Where the moment I put them on, they were definitely as good as, if not better, than the V-Trues. Couldn't say the, I think the only other brand where I may have thought that was V-Moda, and for the reason that I had mentioned earlier, Steel Series had sent me a headset, and I actually bought a couple of Steel Series over the years. Uh, but they were also, as much as I like the sound quality, as much as I appreciate what Steel Series, first showed me was possibly the future of audio, where you'd be using your computer to play back audio at a high quality or a dedicated audio player. I had like an iRiver H10, or was it an H20? I forget. I lost it on the E3 Business Summit. Yeah, I'm still bitter about that. Anyway, so keeping this in keeping this in mind that this was a planar magnetic, and that it was basically trading blows with a one of the best driver designs. I think if we go back and look at the V True, a lot of people really did like this headphone. I mean, the user reviews, the most if you look beyond at actual user reviews to people who have it, not necessarily audiophiles who are comparing it to their favorite headset, users love it. Audiophiles were split, like it's got too much bass or it's too fiddly in this end. Well, if you're curating your music to a specific set of headphones that you have, and the next set of headphones that you get don't do that range of audio exactly the same, well, of course it's going to be different. That's why it's a different headphone. And yeah, there is a certain point of you buy the headphones that fit you. For some people, I'm still sure the V-Trues are over-the-ear headphones. They're just not for me. Anyways, uh, so I moved from the Velodynes to the Hi-Fi Mans, and shortly after I moved to the Hi-Fi Mans, uh, drop ran this, the O2 plus SDAC. Now, this wasn't a shot at the Zonar so much as I was getting more into uh, how can I guess there's no easy way to say this. I was trying to simplify things down. And I got the O2 SDAC not because I didn't like my Zonar, but quite honestly, the Zonar is a pain in the rear end to deal with because it's still a PCIe card on the back of the computer, which means if you want to change your wires around, change out headphones, you've still got to reach around to the back of the computer. I had a Hercules Game Theater XP long ago, and that breakout box, I couldn't imagine not ever not having a breakout box again. I bought a Sound Blaster with a breakout box that was nowhere near as good as the Hercules Game Theater XP. Uh, we're just Hercules Game Theater because you have to understand that the Hercules Game Theater. Oh, Amazon actually may have one for sale. Really? All right. Okay. Yeah. There we. Currently unavailable, but you can see in the picture that breakout box had USB ports, it had game ports, it had audio ports, it had proper old style headphone ports. So like I could use my old uh my big headphones, these Sennheisers, JVC, the Sony's on that no problem. And it had an optical out and all sorts of other. It had the DVD audio, CD audio in. That breakout box was brilliant. And I always missed having a breakout box when I really stopped using the Sound Blasters, and that's an entire story unto itself. And Zonar never, as far as I know, made a breakout box for the card that I had. So here we are. And so I got the O2 SDAC, and as I noted before, this does the 24-bit 96K audio, and it's what I've been using since. And we're coming up on 53 minutes, so I need to finish this off. Okay. And it comes down to, I already told you early in the stream, I got the Razer Kraken Kitty Edition as a Christmas gift. And the person who was commissioned the computer and bought me those headphones, it's like, well, I want a pair of those headphones. I'm thing is, the Razers max out at 48K 16 bit. Audio quality for audio quality, they're not as good as other headphones in their price range, or at least headphone setups that you can get, but you are trading off maximum audio quality for ease of use. You just plug them in and go. And coming back to what I really started this out so long ago with was the Zalman literally six speaker headphone. I know on my ears what a surround sound, an actual surround sound, discrete channel configuration is supposed to sound like. Because I had one. I mean, if Drop ever remix these with better drivers, count me in. I don't care if it's like $700. You know, it's like I'll do something. I'll become a guinea pig for a lab or something. I just those things were awesome. They weren't great audio from an audiophile perspective, but I knew what surround sound was supposed to sound like. And before the Razors, every other will do surround sound with your stereo headset just never worked. It never sounds right. It never sounds accurate. And then along here comes Razor with the Kraken Kitty Edition with the THX, and they nailed it. When I put it in the THX surround mode, I honestly have the same physical experience. Where I feel sound is coming from is exactly the same experience that I had with those Zalmans all those years ago. But I don't use the Razors that much. I use uh, right now I'm actually on the HE5, uh, drop HE5, and I picked these up. And these things are awesome. The biggest problem is there's not a whole lot of difference between these and the HE4XXs, at least from my perspective on the amplifier I have. If you've got a better amplifier or a better digital audio converter, say you've got a 32-bit 384, and yeah, like I said, I think like my topping NX4 does that. Uh, if if you're pushing that kind of data throughput, there you might get a larger separation than I do on what I commonly use these headphones for. I use the fives though because they are angled on the bottom, so it's when you're working blind, it's easier to tell, which way the headphone is facing. But there's another reason why I don't use the Razer Krakens. They're kind of heavy. The whole kitty thing adds a little bit of weight. And instead, I've actually been using a different headphone for a lot of these recent streams. I mean, the Razer does, I think, stereo microphone input. The what I'm using literally right now only does stereo. But what do I actually use? What have I been talking on? And why do you hear me get up and move around occasionally? Well, because I've gone back to Steel Series, and I'm actually using the Arctis One Wireless Cyberpunk Edition. These also top out at 16-bit 48K, but they are wireless. And the other reason I bought the ones I bought is because they work with the Switch. And okay, they're maybe a little gaudy if you're out and about, but I'll take gaudy over having wireless audio when I'm out and about rather than having to fumble about with wires. Uh, so that's kind of just a rundown, a recap of the earlier stream is um, apparently is I get um, it's kind of I understand why the person requested it the way they did is I suspect there's a tax law in here that if they buy something as a gift for somebody else, even if it gets returned to them, it's like a tax write-off. I mean, I may have that wrong. But their little comment was, I just can't see spending $150 for headphones for myself, and but you're willing to spend $150 plus $150 for a solid state drive and for me to ship you headphones, and you're like, yeah, I'm, yeah, this is one of those where I know that I had a rough day today, but I think I'm going to have to ask again to make sure I understood how that request is working. Um, would I try and convince them to go with a Steel Series? I don't know. The Razor Krakens have an appeal. And I really do like the surround sound, how it works. I mean, it actually works. Uh, and that's really all I had. I think that brings everyone up to date on what's going on with my media server, what I did to it, a little bit down audio file history, and a little bit down electronics, and a little bit into what hardware I'm actually using to create these streams. And kind of the, did I hear that right from last night? And going to go back and double check. Did I understand you right? You're going to buy them. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like I realize how this works. I know what to order, and it's like I never gave up building custom computers. I just don't do it or don't advertise it. So I get why they'd want to have me do that and then ship it to them. It also gives me a chance to make sure that the product came in. How can I? There's sometimes it's I kind of want to reference Raida's computer again, where he got a computer that was broken out of the box. The solid state drive wasn't mounted. Keeping that in mind, I get why somebody would, it's go, yeah, get it shipped to yourself. I'll pay for it, ship it to yourself. And okay, this does give me a chance to look it over, make sure that it's actually what they expect it is. It's still just gotta be the honest